today we're going to talk about time management. And I think pretty much all of you have probably read, heard, seen something about time management, and I'm going to hopefully talk about it from a different angle. Simply because I learned about time management from some of the best people in the world. I think when I focus on it, I have some excellent time management. If I don't focus on it, I have crappy time management. And I want to kind of share a bit on how this works. As always, two things. Take notes as if you were teaching this stuff to someone else. Really, this is always the key thing, how you should take notes. So always ask yourself, how could I explain this at home, or how could I explain this to a friend? And second, we're going to do this a bit more interactive today. Last time we didn't have so much interaction. Today we're going to do it a bit more interactive. I'm going to ask people to share. For those of you that want to share, you can. You don't have to. This is really, really important, right? When someone shares, then listen to that person and ask yourself, what could I learn from this? Or how does this affect me? So this person sharing is not this person sharing, it's actually so that everyone kind of hears a different voice and kind of thinks of it. And if I ask questions, do me a favor and then please answer so that we have a bit of a dialogue and not just me kind of talking in front. Let's get started. When we talk about time management, what are the two terms that always come to mind when we talk about time management? There's always two words that always come to mind.
Urgent and important.
Great. Urgent versus important, okay? Now, here's the question I have. Why is this a super shit definition for time management?
What's urgent to people may not be urgent.
Exactly. So the question always comes down to what's urgent and what is important. And that is a really, really, really big problem because people have a very difficult time in understanding if something is urgent or not, if something is important or not. And so that's why I don't like these terms, and I will try to not use them. I will fall back every once in a while because they are so common, but I will talk about other things that are a bit more likely. Let's go a bit back and let's talk about some medical stuff. For those of you that are in this company now for a year, we did a workshop a year ago, quite a long time ago. We can do this workshop again, which was about basic human needs, what makes people happy, what makes people unhappy. Who still remembers what makes people happy? It's a scale. Who still remembers the scale?
Wants, needs.
So it's punishment versus reward. Great. Basic things. Okay? So the scale works super simple. You want to have the least punishment as possible, and you want to have the highest reward as possible, right? It's very, very basic. That's what makes people happy. Now, what motivates people more? Less punishment or more rewards? What motivates people more? More reward, really? You think so? Statistic is easy. It's 5 to 1, meaning punishment works 5 times easier than a potential reward. And if you think about this, this actually makes so much sense. We do things because we're so often scared of something rather than looking into what could be a potential reward. In investing, very, very simple terms. 5% down feels super, super horrible. In order to equalize 5% down, we need to statistically make a 25% profit in order to feel similar. And this has been done with bananas and monkeys, where monkeys were given bananas. You gave a monkey a banana. This monkey got a banana and is really happy about this banana. You gave the monkey 2 bananas. The monkey was a bit happier, obviously, 2 bananas. You gave the monkey 3 bananas, but you took 1 away. What do you think happened to the monkey? He got completely pissed because you took a banana away from that monkey. Even though, how many bananas does the monkey still have? 2. So this 1 taking away is the same thing as receiving 5 bananas. So we humans have always this kind of idea that we want to run away from punishment. So we want to put punishment away. Potential rewards are not that relevant because they are only 1/5 as strong as potential punishment. And this is something that's really, really relevant understanding this when it comes to good time management. And we're going to talk about this. What is one of the worst things for humans when it comes to time management? If we talk about fear, about punishment, about running away from, what in time management do we not want to have? When we talk about time management, what do people never want to hear, or what do people never want to have to say? I am late. I'm late, right? When we talk about time management, people never want to be late. Never. That's the worst thing. If a project is due on Friday, people always worry about not being ready on Friday. So obviously, instead of having the content urgent, let's introduce a different term, and let's call it deadline or timeline. A deadline can be either short term, or it can be that long term that there is no deadline. There's no deadline. The best invention life gave us is death. Without death, humans would not be where we are, because without death, to anything we do, there's no deadline, there's no timeline. There's no stress, there's no prioritization. And a lot of philosophers have actually thought about, if there was no death, maybe humans would get nothing done because we would have no incentive. Why do it now if we have another 100 years to wait? The problem about the end is we don't know when it happens. We don't know. And this is where it gets really, really tricky, because let me tell you some things. And you all know this. When you were in college or in high school, and let's say this is now, they did these studies. And you had to do a project, and this project was reasonably being done in 1 week, okay? So it could take 1 week. Now they went and gave people 1 month of time, and they gave people 1 year of time. Same project. They took a class of each 100 people, and each of them had either a week, a month, or a year. But it was reasonably to be done in 1 week. Who do you think performed the best?
1 week.
Interesting, the 1 week. Why didn't the 1 month and the 1 year do better? They had more time. They had time pressure. The problem was, because they had less time, they put more emphasis on it, and they worked harder on it. Now here is where it gets really tricky. When this project gets really large, and let's say it takes 1 month to do this project, what happens many times is, if you have too long of a time, you start too late. You start maybe 3 weeks before, and you can't finish in time, because the project is too large. Now, in a project like this doesn't appear proper. But let's talk about health. When is the right time to start eating healthy in order to not develop cancer? When is the right time to stop smoking to not die of lung cancer? When is the right time to go and work out every day so that you live better? When is the right time to spend more time with your parents, because they might die sometime and you never have the chance to spend more time with them? The problem with things that don't have a timeline is that we don't notice them enough, and sometimes we start working on them way too late. The other side to the coin, so we have one coin is timeline, the other one is impact. And that maybe comes down a bit to urgent versus important. So I prefer these two words. Is there a deadline to it, and what does the deadline look like? And we're going to make a little comparison. And what's my impact? Now, impact is really, really relevant, because impact comes from something that's individual to all of us, and that's something called priorities. Priorities. Many times people hear this, how do you work with self? How do you spend your time on yourself with other people and work? How would you combine that? And people really struggle in mixing this time or kind of manage time this way. And one of the reasons is because they actually don't set the priorities, because they base priorities on quantity. And they look at how much time do I spend on each of these things, and they say, well, I work 10 hours a day, I sleep, so let's remove this away. I have 2 hours here, and I don't know, on average, let's say I spend 2 hours with other people. So, or let's make it easier and say, we do 3 hours here, 15 hours. So work is most important, other people are second, and I'm third. That's how they rank their priorities. And then what happens is, they keep going, no deadline, no timeline, because there's no timeline to switch to focus on yourself first until it's too late. And that's when people burn out. So very first exercise is right now, how would you rank yourself, your relationships, and work? How would you rank it? You can put this down. Write it down now. It's priority. And this is important when we talk about impact. How would you rank this? How would you rank yourself, your relationships, and work? This is most of the times when I talk to people about time management or work-life balance, whatever bullshit that is, to kind of how would you rank that? What would go first? Okay, so let's ask a different question before I go and ask if anyone wants to share. And let's ask a quality question. Let's ask this. You're close to a heart attack. What are we doing? We're putting the deadline really, really close. Really, really close. That's how you can understand impact, right? So you're close to a heart attack. Your relationship is about to break up. You have another 3 hours. And your company right now is going haywire. Complete haywire. Okay? So we change the time frame. And with changing the time frame, people change their perspective. What is the order now? What do you look at first? What do you look at second? What is third? Answer this yourself. If there's an absolute emergency right now in all these three fields, which one would you solve first? Which one would you solve second? Which one would you solve third? Maybe it's the same as you already had. So when I do this exercise with people, and does anyone want to share? Jessica?
So I would for sure put myself first.
Yep.
Because I have the heart attack. Then I would actually put the business second.
Yep.
Because the person who breaks up with me doesn't respect or doesn't value,
Okay.
like doesn't see that I'm having a heart attack or feel very bad, like I'm in a bad position. So just focus on themselves.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, maybe the emotional factor here is different. What happens if I say your dad is close to dying?
Then I would probably even change again to
Okay.
focus on my dad and.
So obviously it depends on the person there. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay. Okay, so the reason this is really interesting and relevant is this. If you do this exercise properly, and obviously the person depends, this is how you have to set the impact on the individual topic. It means that if you set for yourself 2 hours a day for yourself, neither work nor the relationship is allowed to impact that. It also means if you set 3 hours for a relationship a day, you're not allowed to have your phone there. You have to value the relationship. Work should not interfere. It means that if your child has problems, you leave work to take care of your kid. And this is where impact comes in. And this is what's really, really difficult for a lot of people, because they look at quantity and they think work is number one. And that messes everything up, because they don't manage to put themselves first, because they feel guilty when they don't work. They feel guilty when they are not with another person. And this is how everything starts. If you ask yourself how many hours a day do you really want to spend on yourself, and what this means is individual for every one of you, then you have to be consistent with this, and you're not allowed to let time of less impactful things mess up with the rest. The easiest to ask yourself this question is if you make a really, really, really short time horizon. The longer the time horizon, the more difficult it is to judge certain things. So now, can I turn this around? Nope, I can't. So I have to erase a little bit. So now let's make this typical quadrant that you guys know, and you know it from this from urgent versus important. So let me move this a little bit. So here we have impact. This is a lot of impact. This is very little impact. So this is a lot. This is impact little. Okay? This is short notice, short term. And this is actually no deadline. Okay, does this make sense? So we have these quadrants, right? And things happen on these two quadrants. We have stuff that happens with very high impact that are very, very short term due. And we have things that have no deadline actually. And we have stuff that has very little impact. So let me ask you this. On this entire thing, which ones are the most important things that we encounter in our time management resolution? Where are they on this kind of quadrant? Where do you think they are? The most important things, the stuff that we have to deal with. Top left? Top left are most of the time the easiest ones to notice. Why are they easy to notice? Because they're short term, they're a heart attack. They're short term, they happen all the time. They're not the most important. I promise you the most important are here. They are the things that deliver the most results. They are the things that have no deadline. They are brushing your teeth every morning. What happens if you don't brush your teeth today? What would happen? Would something happen? Nothing. There's no deadline. But what happens if consistently, and you don't know when, it might happen after 3 days, it might happen after 3 months, 3 years, you don't know. Suddenly, your teeth get foul. So not brushing your teeth is really, really important. It's essential because it has a huge impact, but it has no timeline. The same with healthy eating, the same with sports, the same with spending time with your friends, spending time with relationships. This all lies in the right upper quadrant, and it's the hardest thing to do. It's the most important. Which one is the one we get the most distracted with? Where does the most distractive stuff lie? Sorry, yeah, of course, you're right, yeah. Yeah, distraction, you're right. Distractions. Why do our distractions lie here? Why? Well, they're short term, but most of the time, no impact. That's where distractions are. Give me examples for distractions. YouTube, right? You have a pop-up. I mean, all the social media is designed, and we're going to talk about how social media or how these things work so well from a hormonal level. It's medically, it's very easy to explain with the hormones we have in our body. No pop-ups, little notifications on your phone, the little red dot on an app, an email that comes in, a team member who needs something from you. All these things lie here, all of them. Stuff that is here, stuff that has no impact and no deadline, again, that's irrelevant. Right? That's, I don't know, taking care of a random person that's somewhere that you've never met that you don't know. Of course it would have some kind of stuff, and yes, it has no deadline, but it's, let's say, the impact is quite small. Right? So that's a lot of things. This is the easy part. Right? So here, we're not going to talk about this part, so let's make this black. We're also not going to talk about this part. Why are we not going to talk about this part? Because you don't have problems with this one. This one is the easiest one. It's the stuff that's obvious. It takes a lot of impact, and it's super short notice. So this is really, really easy. Time management, if you understand it, is only about 2 quadrants. It's only about 2. It's about those 2. It's about the distractions, and it's about those. And it's those people in life that manage to spend time here and not here that are considered good with time management. So these are people who focus on things most of the time that have very long time horizons. But because they are so impactful, they're many times quite large. It's those things where it might take 3 years to complete, or in the case of health, an entire life. Or in case of a relationship, an entire life. Or in case of, I don't know, a project in the company, 7 years. But you're consistent every single day, and you don't let the short-term things that have very little impact distract you. These are the people with really, 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 really good time management skills. Does that make sense, or is this confusing? This is the key message for today, and this is the picture that I really want you to keep in mind today. If you only remember one thing today, remember this quadrant, and remember what it means. And remember, the ones that are really good with time management are those that can flip the time that they waste on this crap and spend it here. Because this is really easy to notice. It's really, really easy. What I want you to do now is, I want you to write down at least 5 distractions that you know that they're there. Distractions are urgent things, short-term things, with very little impact. But because they're so shiny and they dingle around, they need your attention all the time right now. But actually, if you're honest, the impact is quite small. And the way you know the impact is very small is, well, because the outcome is not really resourceful. You're just doing something to get stuff done. Think of at least 5 things. Do this now. What are 5 things that you let go in? Maybe it's on your phone, maybe it's on the internet, maybe it's an email, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a phone call, it's your mom, it's someone who wants to meet you, but then when you meet this person, you're always like, oh God, 2 hours, I'll never get back in my life. But you do it because you feel so guilty. Okay, anyone want to share? What are their 5 things? Mike?
Social media.
Okay.
Shopping.
Yep.
Small talk.
Yep.
Newsletters.
Yep.
Notifications.
Great. Who had at least one of those also on their list? Show your hand. Okay. Anyone else want to share? Veronica?
Yeah, I think my mom's calls.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I manage to tell her that I don't have more than 20 minutes or half an hour, and then if I don't stop her, she can talk with me for like 1 hour or maybe even more.
Sure.
And it like instead of sharing some valuable information or like just having a meaningful conversation, it starts, I don't know, she starts talking about relatives that I don't care about or some other things that I really don't care about, but I feel guilty if I don't listen to her stories. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why are we so easy to fall for these short-term things? Even though we know that this is irrelevant stuff. Who doesn't know that wasting time on social media, wasting time with like a call that you're totally upset with, who knows that this is actually really impactful or who thinks it's really impactful? I think no one of us does, right? We all agree that this is time wasting, right? Do we all agree on this? So why is it so difficult? Because of biology. And biology meant it really well with us. It meant it really well. Without us being so focused on this stuff, we would actually not be here today. We would have gone extinct. The only way the human race made it to where we are today is because it is so focused on these things. It's focused on short-term rewards. It's looking for social bonding. And the problem are 4 hormones. And I want to quickly talk about these 4 hormones so you kind of understand the biological problem about them. Okay? Who knows dopamine? What does dopamine do? Makes you feel good. When?
When you do something.
Like what?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. Great. What kind of pleasure? Because it's quite general.
I think it's when adrenaline
Also, very interesting. One of the things is sex. Or
Workout.
food. Great. No, sport doesn't come much there. Weird. Violence. Right? And because these parts are so close to each other, these things many times can be related. Very, very weird, right? But this is like the biological explanation, right? Serotonin, where does that come from? When does it get released?
Is this a painkiller?
No, and endorphins are painkillers. Yeah, serotonin. Also comes mainly from food, actually. So actually food is not as much in dopamine, but it comes from food, yeah? Sleep, yes. And one other thing that's really strong there, laughter. Laughter. Sorry, what did you say?
Sunlight.
Also, but yeah, it comes, but let's put something else, laughter. Okay, what about oxytocin? Where does that come from? Touch?
Relationships.
Yes, human touch, relationships. Okay? And actually, for mothers especially, from a baby. Okay? What about endorphins? Where does that come from? Yeah, be a bit more clear.
Feeling of happiness.
When? So it's actually a natural painkiller. Yeah, natural painkiller. And it gets out when we do something for longer periods of time. Right? So most of the time, like runner's high, maybe you've heard of this, is when you run for 30 minutes, and so that you don't get exhausted. It's basically for persistence. But not long-term persistence. Normally it's for persistence for 30 to 90 minutes. That's kind of the drug, 30 to 90 minutes. Now let's analyze this. Let's analyze this entire list and ask ourselves, does this make sense for someone who lived in the jungle or in a bush, I don't know, 10,000 years ago? Because that's how we are wired. We're not wired how we are today, right? This is really, really recent. Our brain is wired for someone who lived 10,000 years ago. So does this make sense? Does it make sense that these people should have sex, eat food, and obviously also like violence? Why do people need to like violence? Well, because if you're very pacifistic in the old days, you would lose all the time, because it was about you had to kind of hold your ground, right? So that's where this thing comes from. Well, serotonin, food, sleep, and laughter. Of course. Does the human race need relationships and taking care of babies? Of course. Endorphins. Is it really important that you can persist a certain activity for 30 to 90 minutes? Yes. And that's what most of the fights or hunts actually were about. If you could run away from an animal for 60 minutes, most of the time, you either outran it, you were up on a tree, or you were over something, right? So it makes so much sense. Now, how often do we need to do this as normal human beings today? We don't need to run away from animals. We don't need to go out and hunt. So we're trying to get this stimulus from other stuff. And what's really, really good are these short-term distractions with very little impact, because what is more common in the world? Are there more things that are very impactful, or are there more things that are not impactful? Well, there are more things that are not impactful. They're all around us. There's very, very few things that are impactful. Very few. And so we constantly look at those, and because of our biology, we love to focus on this crap. So what I always laugh at is when there's some trainers out there, right, and coaches, and I strongly dislike that, when they try to tell you how you can get rid of this need for these short-term addictions. But this is bullshit. You can't. Biology tells you you can't. And the reason I'm putting this down there is so you don't fall for all these time management tool tricks out there that kind of teach you not to fall for this short-term stuff. The only way to actually do it, there's a couple of ways. And we talk about this is flipping the pain around. What does this mean? Well, we have a pain to pleasure ratio of 5:1. So what if you can connect pain to not doing it? And that's actually a really famous quote from Charlie Munger, partner of Warren Buffett, one of the richest, from Berkshire Hathaway, who said, successful people think in opportunity cost. What does this mean, opportunity cost? What does opportunity cost mean?
Like, for example, if you have a multimillionaire into garden art, then if he would do the garden work himself, then it would cost him like 3,000 an hour, and if he just takes a garden art, it would cost him $10.
Correct. So you need to think of, what would I miss out on if I don't do this? What opportunity would I lose? So you need to turn the pain to pleasure around. And that is what very, very few people actually do. Because most people just give in to their biology and not flipping it around. And if you manage to flip it around and ask yourself, what, we're going to do this exercise actually, because right now you don't know yet what is the impact you should be working on. But if you don't focus on these things and you remind yourself every single day what you're missing out on, you're not going to have enough pain, and the pleasure is not high enough to overcome all this crap that you're getting from all the pleasures from short-term distractions. Because here is the really big problem. So let's talk about a simple example again. Let's talk about the living healthy example, okay? How much fun is it to eat healthy every day, to go running every day, to not give in to chocolate, and so on? How fun is that? It's not much fun. It's actually, the other food, the unhealthy food is way better, isn't it? How certain can you be that by eating healthy and by going running every day, you're definitely going to live very long, you're definitely not going to have cancer? How certain can you be? Not certain. You don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty. Because we all know people who live super healthy and who go running every day, and then, I don't know, they die when they're 50. And we all know people who have been smoking their entire life, eating burger and drinking and stuff, and they're still 90 years old and still happy, right? So that is the major problem. So you need to flip this around, and you need to really ask yourself, what happens if I do this, and what am I missing out on? In order to do this, we need to ask ourselves, what are our priorities in each of these fields? So in self, in relationships, and in work. And so here it gets very interesting. And we did this exercise last time where we talked about time horizons. We talked about most people living in time horizons of a couple of weeks. Some people manage to get time horizons of months, and very, very, very few people getting time horizons of years. So in any of those things, you should ask yourself time horizons. And I guarantee you, you're going to be thinking in time horizons of weeks, because that's normal. Weeks. That's normal. Try to push it to months. And try to push it to years. Now, obviously, since we are here at work, I obviously want to focus on work. But you should you should ask yourself the same thing for yourself and for relationships as well. That's really relevant. So you should ask yourself, what should I be doing every single day that doesn't have a deadline? So it might be out 5 years, but it's going to deliver a huge result. And it's probably something that's really big. And what should I be doing every single day? I don't know. Maybe your goal is, I don't know, lose 20 kilos. 20 kilos. Really big goal. How big is the impact of losing 20 kilos? It's big. Let's agree on this, right? Of course, if you're overweight, if you're underweight, you shouldn't lose 20 kilos. If you're overweight, is there a timeline by when you have to lose 20 kilos? There's no timeline, but it's really impactful. So now, this is going to take you maybe months, probably years to lose 20 kilos. So now the thing is, can you do it every single day without letting short-term biology needs screw around with the stuff that you actually want to get to? The same with relationships. If you're in a relationship and you're happy, does it make sense to let a short-term argument get the long-term balance screwed up? Now ask yourself the same thing about work. What are you working on right now that might have a project that's only finished in a few months? Maybe you even work on a project that takes an entire year. This is the exercise you're going to do right now. What are the types of projects that you could or should be working on? Maybe you're not yet, but you should. Maybe you are already. And what are these projects that you know you should be doing that is a bit further out, maybe doesn't have a clear deadline, but would have really, really an important impact? Take a few minutes, or take a minute, and think about 1 or 2 or 3 things here at work that fall under this category for you. Maybe you don't know one, maybe you should do something. And again, there shouldn't be 20 things. There should be maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things. It might be that there's only one thing. Jeff Bezos, very interesting, Jeff Bezos always says he always likes to work on one thing for 7 years. He fuddles around for a couple of months on what this one thing is. When he picks one thing, that's what he works on. He did this at the very beginning with Amazon, then he did this with the cloud, and now he does this with Blue Horizon, or what's it called, Blue Origin. Blue Origin, his space company. And now it gets really important. So now you have your 1 or 2 things, and you have all these small distractions. And now I promise you already that just those 5 things that you thought about many times actually keep you from this one thing. That is really, really important. And maybe you need to break it down a bit more. Maybe you need to work it out a bit more. Maybe you need to think about distractions here at the office. What distracts you here at the office? What are these short, small little things here at the office that keep you from this one important thing that probably doesn't have a timeline or very long timeline? And because our biology loves these short-term things, it screws around with us on these things. So the trick for people who have really good time management is to think of this one project. And here's the thing. And spend 80% of your time on this thing. 20% of the time can be on distractions. That's okay. As long as the 80% are on those things that have a very long time horizon, which is long is relative to you, with high impact. Does that make sense? Any questions on this? Does anyone want to share? Maybe share what's the project they should be working on, might be 1 or 2 or 3 projects, and how at the moment, today already at work, many times short-term nuisances or annoying little things that pop up keep you from executing this project and having really, really good time management. Anyone want to share? No one? Okay, fair enough. Veronica.
I guess reading something that is not related directly to work,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, some books that might have really huge impact on
Yeah.
me as a personality, but I think that there are more both urgent and important stuff related to work, and that I can see results very soon. And then I just don't have time for reading some, I don't know, literature, classical literature or something else that like I don't see any like the result that would come anytime soon, or I can apply.
Fantastic. So let's put this into the little quadrants. Why is reading a book? Why does it fall in the right upper quadrant? Is there a clear deadline by when you have to have read that book? No. No clear deadline. We all agree, right? Okay. And is could the impact be quite big with the knowledge that comes out of the book?
Could be, yes.
Definitely, right? So let's talk opportunity cost. How could you improve the urgency on reading this book? By doing what? By pushing the timeline shorter. How could you push the timeline shorter so that you actually read the book? What could you do?
Also on social media, like you're doing.
Yeah, post on social media, correct. Well, people always think, so that's really funny. People always think I post these things because I want to tell the world so many things. I don't. I know all this stuff, and I've learned all this stuff in medicine and so on. So I know how to game the system. I need to because I'm the same fool as everyone else when it comes to time management. So I just need to game the system. One of the reasons why I teach so many things publicly is because it puts me on pressure and learn these things. Had I not taught cryptocurrencies every single day to the public for the last, 3 years, I would have not learned anything about cryptocurrencies because there was no time pressure to do it. And when the time pressure was there right before the ICO, it would have been too late. Right? So that's the trick. And you will see a lot of people finding their own ways. Now, everyone will find their own way. Some people will find their way by just telling one friend and staying accountable. And some people will actually need to do something else. Right? The trick is to bring the time horizon shorter, to make these little steps accountable to you. I'm telling you, a lot of people do on the first impression something that you think do it, but then when you ask them, they do it for a totally different reason because it gives them more than it gives the public. Anyone else want to share something? It's okay if not. Okay, so let's go down now, and we have a large general concept. So let's break this a bit down and get more into the mechanics. So let's erase this. So let's break this down. How should you actually now structure the day, or how should you structure a bit of your time management or your calendar, right? So let's go down a bit into the how. So we spoke about somewhat, very, very broad. We spoke about some reasons why these things are happening. So let's go into some mechanics and let's go some executable parts, okay? So obviously, time is limited, right? So you have, let's call it a day. And now the question is, you have your calendar here. How should you, if you're really, really good with spending time, how should you fill and spend your time? How should you go about? Out of this quadrant, and we leave the quadrant on, let's see it as money, right? And you need to spend money on these 4 quadrants. Where should you spend money first? On what?
8 hours sleep.
Why?
The next 16 hours are worthless without it.
Sure. Let's talk about quadrants first. Which quadrant would you spend first? Great. This one, right? Left upper corner. So first we would spend short term with high impact. Which one would you spend second? Great. Long term with high impact. Which one would you spend next? Great. Yeah. So short term, no impact, and then we have long, no impact. Great. So now the only question is, if this is, and you have 24 hours, you just need to ask yourself, what of the things that happen on a daily basis that you would love to spend your time on, right? Just see it as money. You have 24 hours, that's the amount you can spend, that's all you have. And what are the things that you need to spend time on? And now you need to fill in these things. Now here is where it gets tricky. Every once in a while, we need to trade a bit. Every once in a while, I agree with you, sleep goes here because it is relevant short term, because if I don't sleep 8 hours, then I'm not going to function. But we all know that sometimes I have to kind of take a loan and I can only sleep 4 hours and I need to push it further down because maybe it goes more into here, or it actually goes into distraction because I need to kind of hustle on something right now and I need to cut down on sleep. Now I can't do this long term, but I could do this for short term. Does that make sense? So you need to approach the way you spend your time just like you're spending money. You need to budget for it. And you can't go with those things that need the most time first. So you can't go and say, you know what, I'm gonna do this first just because it's the longest chunk. No, you need to budget differently. Now then obviously there's other factors. You can't just go and say, you know what, I'm not gonna do, for example, you can compromise on not spending time on your relationship for some time. That's okay, but you can't do this for a very long time. You need to compensate for it. Right? So let's keep this quite on a regular day. So let's say we're not compromising. Let's say we're not taking a loan. We're just taking a standard day. Okay, so let's do 8 hours sleep. I like this. Okay, what else would fall in there? Let's do an average day. Stuff that would normally fall in there. Brainstorm. Okay, shower, wash. Okay, how long do we need? An hour for this a day? Okay, great. This falls in here, right? So let's call this wash. What else do we have? Food, how long? 2 or 3 hours?
Half an hour?
No, for the entire day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, we need to do everything. 2 hours, right? Okay, so let's say 2-hour food. You will see, the funny thing is, when you do a proper budget, you will actually see we have a lot of time. We're just wasting our fucking time here. That's the major thing. Okay, so now we're down to 11 hours. What else? Transit, maybe like transit around. So we have 1 hour, okay? So that's transit. Okay, so now let's say we're at 12 hours, right? So we have spent half. So now it gets really interesting. Because now the question comes already, what about email? What about WhatsApp? What about social media? Where does all this fall into? Very interesting. So today, this morning, is really, really accurate. Nate from Airbnb wrote back to me. You know when I wrote to him? I'm not kidding, 6 weeks ago. And he wrote back to me and he says, hey Julian, sorry, I'm only answering emails once a month at the moment, and I received so many emails, and I always want to respond to yours, so you only came into the second cycle. Because I think he does 2 hours once a month. That's all the emails he answers, personally. And because he couldn't finish all his email in the 2 hours, I dropped into the next cycle, and now it was my turn. So that's why he responded to me after 6 weeks. Why? Because for him, emails are in the short-term distractions, and he would never spend this time before he spends that time. So he says, here, I give, 2 hours a month, and not more. So everything else comes first. So I don't know, for an engineer, other stuff might be in there. Right? For an engineer might say, I don't know, I need to do my 6 hours a day of coding, and I'm not going to join a meeting. I'm not going to join a meeting because I need to do 6 hours of coding, because a meeting might go here. But then someone else, a manager maybe, who doesn't do coding says, you know what, the meetings for me are here, or actually meetings also go here because what I need to do is I need to strategize. The meeting calls for my attention right now, and I need to strategize. So the important thing is what's non-negotiable is this order. And this is where a lot of you, and including myself, struggle. That's non-negotiable. What is negotiable is in where do you put certain things in during certain times of the year, during the months, during the week, during the day. And that is the key part. And now obviously it gets really interesting because you're going to have these different tables, and let's go back and let's have a self table, and you're going to have a relationship table, and you're going to have a work table. And so now the question is going to become, which of these tables do you fill first? And I highly recommend you fill this one first. And I highly recommend you fill this one second. And you fill work third. I highly recommend you fill work third. This doesn't mean that work always goes third. There will be times during the year where you will sacrifice sleep, you will sacrifice, not eating properly for certain times of the year. But if this takes too much, this is too long, your loan is not repayable anymore, and you're sacrificing. You shouldn't do this. The same with relationships. So that is the key part. And you need to fill these things first. I have made a dedication on when do I see my parents, because I know if I don't put my parents in there, I'll never see them, because I'll always find a lot of short-term, unimportant reasons to see them, not to see them, because I can always do something else. The same with my wife and the same with myself. I'm willing to not go to a meeting if that means I can go for a run. And I want to go for that run. That's why I don't take meetings from 8 to 9, because I want to do something for myself. And now some of you will say, you know what? Actually, I like working in the morning, but you will see this with Toby or other people. I want to go to the gym from 6 to 7, and I'm fine working afterwards again, but I'm not going to compromise on this. This is a really, really important part. So you need to start with this large frame, and you need to start spending. See your time as money. Just, it's completely limited, 24 hours a day. That's all you have. And don't change the order of how you can spend it. Because, don't forget, the important things with no deadlines are the ones that are so essential, because they're going to bring a lot of huge impact. That's what all of time management is about, if you think about it. Questions, feedback, own perceptions, things that you have noticed on yourself. Please, Feroz.
Sorry, I had to step up to take the call
Yeah.
just now when you were telling the Airbnb story of someone who emailed you 6 weeks.
Yeah, so Nate, one of the co-founders,
Yes.
right? And I'm quite close with him. I've known him for quite some time. Go visit him all the time in San Francisco when I'm there, and I get ideas from him. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about culture is because he's so passionate about the Airbnb culture. And so I wrote him a question on how they manage dealing with silos and making sure that people collaborate more. And I just wanted, and I had my thoughts in there, and I wanted to get his input. And I thought he's just not going to reply, because I wrote to him, I think in June. He was still back in June or something. And I got an email this morning. And the email started with, "Hey dude, sorry for the super late reply. I know I always reply. I only do 2 hours of email a month at the moment, and I couldn't do you in the month of July, so you fell into the month of August. So I did want to reply. Hope you still take it." And then he wrote this really long reply on how they work on silos. Why? Well, because, and I don't blame him for this, he puts me into this category, which is fair enough. I take his short-term attention, and I have very little impact. Now, obviously, for me, it would be different, because I see him socially higher than me. So obviously, probably, if he would write me, I might actually put him here, right? This, again, very individual, right? And fair enough. I don't blame him for doing that. But so that's obviously the reason, right? So that's the key part. And I think that's, very interesting to see how people who are very, very good in spending their time actually behave.
Maybe also people put us in different categories based on the channel that we choose. Because,
Of course.
for example, if I see, I don't know, WhatsApp message or like my work email and my personal email, that I would reply immediately or like within a few hours to WhatsApp, then I would definitely reply in the next or like during the day on the work email, and then my personal email would be just flooded with new emails for a week or maybe
Yep.
even more, because it's not that urgent or like not that important.
And the trick would be, how could you cut down on WhatsApp and actually get stuff done and not respond to WhatsApp within 5 minutes, right? Now, that's where the interesting part happens. How would you even do this if you mix WhatsApp for work and personal, which is something I do, right? Which is not very good, but it's just a behavior I do. But so how could you cut down on this, right? How could you not have this distraction? And so we're going to work on some small mechanics. So here is the large scale mechanics. We're going to break it a bit further down, and I'm going to give you some smaller tools. There's hundreds of tools out there. I want to give you some that I found really, really useful. But I first want to make sure that the large, grand, like the scheme of things works out.
Correct me if you're going to address that anyway, but how often do you go back and reflect on your own priorities?
Man, that's really good. Like I go on a mastermind trip twice a year. These are people that are friends, people that I don't know so well, and we reflect on this. I've just been on one, and there's 3 days. We reflect. I've done this over Christmas, actually. Were you there? Yeah, we did this over Christmas, New Year, where I did this as well. I think you should do this more often than not. I agree. I think this is really, really relevant. Okay. Great, yeah, but I think that's super important, yeah. Any other input, feedback? Kevin, did you have anything or not? Okay, great. Okay, so let's break this down and go a bit more even concrete into some kind of tools, some kind of things that work really well. Now, I think one of the most obvious ones, and you know it, but let's ask who actually does this. Who of you does not have notifications on your phone, on your email? You actually proactively have to open WhatsApp. You actually proactively have to open your email in order to see a message. Who has this? You don't! You get every message. Okay, for Slack. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, right, that's the first thing. So I tell you, the first thing is to understand to not have these things call you, but you calling it. So if you have no notification, no pop-up, no nothing, that's the first step, because then you don't get distracted. You actually have to go into WhatsApp. You have to go into email. Now, here's a big caveat, and I fall for this caveat as well, which means is I open email every 10 minutes and check if I got an email, right? This is super stupid, right? And I waste a lot of time doing this as well, right? So what I'm saying is no one is perfect. I'm just saying you need to use some strategies that kind of work. Great? So that is a really important thing. So if you reflect, where do your distractions come from? The first question is, why are you going there? You're going there because of biology, we talked about it, but how could you cut down on it? Very straightforward. Next really important thing, right? And this is the Pareto principle. Who knows the Pareto principle? Okay, Pareto is very simple. Most of you know the basic rule, but I'm going to break it further down. And this is something most of you are not aware. 20% of what you do gives you 80% of the results. Okay, most of us know this. This also means the remaining 80% only deliver 20% of the results. So your first job is to understand what are the 20%. The easiest thing to do this is in language. If a language has 100,000 words, 20,000 words will actually let you understand most of the language. Now here it gets very interesting. We can break this down even further. We can do 20% of something gives you 80% of the result of this. So let's divide the 20% by 5, 20%. So we have 4% give you 64% of the results. Or, and now it gets really interesting, 0.8%, so let's make 1% out of it, give you 51% of the results. So if you would manage to find the single most important thing, you would still own 51% of anything that you could potentially do if you did all 100 things. So that is where the first trick starts. The first trick starts, this is a Steve Jobs quote, it's so important to learn to say no more than saying yes. What to say no to is many times more important than what to say yes to. This is a Steve Jobs quote. And this is so important because you need to say no to 99 things in order to still get 51% of the results. And this is where it gets really hard because we don't want to say no because these things are screaming and it hurts our biology not to do those things. It makes us feel good because that's what made the human race get to where we are. Don't forget that. Okay, so that's the first really powerful thing. Now here, it's where it gets very interesting now. It's more powerful. Let's say the 1% is very rare to actually being able to achieve. Most of the time, we actually do get here. But it's better to work on 5 important things where you have understood the 20%, so you're spending 100% of the time, 5 times 20, but you're getting 400% of the results. So the key thing is this. You need to understand the things that are really impactful and important. You don't need to perfectionize it. You don't. You don't have to become perfect. That means if you want to focus on your health, if you want to focus on, I don't know what, doing great stuff at work, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to achieve 100%, and 100% you don't make anyways. It's actually more important to filter out the key 20% and pick a few of those really important ones, and you're going to have massive, massive, massive results. And this is something when you look at really effective people who get so much done, and you always wonder, how is this possible? How can this person do this and this and this and this? And for example, one of the most interesting examples for me was when I was kite surfing and doing medicine at the same time. And people still are surprised. How was I able to study medicine and be a professional kite surfer? Well, it's very simple. Most of the stuff in medicine is completely irrelevant and you don't have to do it. Most of all, going to class. Going to class is useless in medicine because all this stuff is in books and it doesn't change. I mean, bones look the same 100 years ago than they look today, right? So you don't have to go to class and listen to a teacher explaining bones because you can get it out of a book from anywhere. So you can be really efficient and you can combine these things. And kite surfing, you can kite surf 12 hours a day. You can kite surf maybe 2 hours a day. So the key is, how can I pick the key 2 hours and study the other 10 not being at class? Yeah, I'm not going to be the best kite surfer in the world, but I'm going to be one of the best. And the same was in medicine. I was one of the best students, not the best student. So the key is, you can apply this to anything. But for this, you need to understand what is really important to you. Right? And that's where a lot of priorities come. Any kind of reflections on this, stuff that you have stuff that you have noticed for yourself or stuff that you have found on especially Pareto principle or something?
For me,
Yeah.
For me, what I like is not all hours of the day are the same budget.
Great.
So I have different levels. I get
Mhm.
fatigue after lunch, so I set my number 3 tasks on my downtime.
That's great.
So 8 to 10 is my peak time, and then budget accordingly, I guess.
That's actually the next point here, so it's great that you lead into this. Yeah. No, it's perfect. I like this. It's a really good lead over, so I don't have to make the lead over. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So that brings me actually to the natural biorhythm, also to something called rituals that you can normally use, right? All of us are either morning people or evening people. The worst idea I've ever heard is that every one of us has to get up early. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because some will have different biorhythms than others. Now the key thing is this: don't use it as an excuse. Don't use it as an excuse and saying, oh, I'm an evening person, that's why I get up late, but then in the evening all you're doing is just lying in bed watching TV, right? That's a big problem. Or say, you know what, I'm a morning person, and then you get up, like, you get to bed really, really early, but you don't do anything in the morning either, right? Don't use it as an excuse. That's the first thing. The second thing, just like Faro said, budget your time accordingly. So do things during certain times. One of the things with me you will notice is that I don't come to the office that early, not because I'm an evening person, I'm actually a morning person. I like to get up really early, but I want to get stuff done uninterruptedly in the morning. And it's very interesting, there's people who like to stay really, really late because they like to code or they write or they work really, really late in the evening. Now, learn this and do this on yourself, right? This is, I think, the first thing. The second thing is build rituals. Our body is so good with getting into a flow state if you learn to trigger it. So do similar things to trigger a behavior afterwards. For example, if you notice that in a certain room, in a certain desk, in a certain area, you are way more creative, then use this as a trigger. That's why you shouldn't work and sleep in your bed. That's why you should either work or sleep in your bed, and since it's your bed, you should probably only sleep in there, right? That's a really, really bad trigger, actually. The same is with certain places. Like I noticed when I go, for example, for walks, I'm way more creative than sitting down. And so whenever I was in meetings, I was always wondering, why am I so bad in meetings when I had to sit? So that's why when you do meetings with me, many times I actually walk, because I'm way more creative doing this, right? But you have to notice this, and this sets a really, really good trigger. Some people will actually be so rigid, and it's really good for them, that they set complete morning rituals, evening rituals. Like they say, you know, I get up, then I do this. Next I do this. I do sports, I write, I meditate, I do this. If you like doing this and it works for you, you should do it. I'm not that kind of person. I like a little bit more flexity. I like some things. And I have very similar rhythms throughout the day. I do meetings most of the times in the afternoon because that's what works for me, and I try not to do them early in the morning. Again, everyone is individual here, right? When do you like going to the gym? Do you like doing this in the morning, during the day, in the evening? How do you do with your relationships? For me, for example, what I have found is I prefer chunking these things. I like to spend relationship time rather one entire day and do nothing else on that day, rather than half an hour here, half an hour there. I don't like this as much. The same with my parents, right? I like to see my parents for 2-3 days straight, not doing any work, than seeing them, I don't know, every week for 10 minutes. Now, obviously, since they're in Austria, it's a bit of a different story. If your parents are local, it might be different. But these are just some examples that I kind of want to instill in you. Right? Does that make sense? Last thing, then we're kind of done with this, is procrastination. How can you break out if you catch yourself procrastinating? How can you break out of procrastination? What do you think?
Give yourself some deadline.
Great. The first thing is you need to push this thing down. Now, this is the first term we call, so let's talk about procrastination cure. Procrastination cure. There's actually 3 remedies to it. Okay, first one is focus. You need to shift your focus. What helps in procrastination is opportunity cost and shifting time horizons to short term. Focus. Focus helps so much. You need to shift your focus. Right? If you are about to cheat on your food, on your diet, shift your focus. What are you eating on right now? Why are you doing this? Shifting it really close closer. Look at all the bad things. Shifting focus. Now, this is not enough. It's never enough. There's 2 other things you have to do. What are the other things?
Turn your procrastination into a time task.
Yes, that to me has a lot to do with focus. I agree with you. Yeah, but what else could you do?
Change your body.
Yes, exactly. Body. So it's physiology or body, right? Body helps. Body can be stuff that's very easy. Can be changing the place where you are. You will notice most of the time when you procrastinate, it is because you sit in the same place, most of the time on your computer or in front of your phone, and you are on these short-term distractions. If you would just put your computer away, put your phone away, get up, and just walk around, the studies are so amazing, it immediately, the procrastination disappears by I think by 70% of the people. Just getting up and putting the stuff away, changing, getting up, sitting down, moving into a different position, going somewhere where you're normally used to being super productive. That changes it already. Okay? And the last thing, please?
I would say stop over-planning or overthinking and try to come up with the perfect plan and just get shit done.
Yeah, I agree. To me, I mean, I agree with you. I put this all under focus. I look for 3 very certain terms that just have to do in how you beat procrastination, and then we could break it down what it eventually means. The last one is language. And language is talking and listening. Very important, talking and listening. It's the reason why motivating music makes it easier for us to work out. It's the reason if we have to, I don't know, deal with procrastination and we listen to a motivating talk, we get stuff done. But when we repeat these words, so maybe we have a sentence that really kind of inspires us. So I have a couple of quotes, for example, that I always have there, and then I just repeat these quotes. And just saying the quote automatically changes and removes the procrastination. Right? The way, and I'm not kidding, I've done workshops like these for corporates that last an entire day. And we do these for 10 hours. So I'm breaking 10 hours into one. There's a lot of smaller parts that go with this, right? And a lot of exercises. So you need to be creative yourself. The goal here is not that I keep you 10 hours in a workshop. The goal is to give you some inspiration and tools that you can apply to yourself. And then you can grow from there. Okay? So procrastination core. So let's quickly kind of summarize, right? The entire problem starts by us spending too much time on short-term, unimpactful things, and not on those things that have no seeming timeline, but are really, really powerful. We do this because our biology screws with us, and that's very, very normal, and we're absolutely okay with this. So the remedy of that is understanding our priorities, budgeting them, and filling them in order, not the other way around. And you should do this, for example, in the morning. You can use some tricks, just like Pareto. You can use rituals. You can use the natural biorhythm. And if you ever catch yourself procrastinating, you can get out with 3 things. You will have to reflect on some of those for yourself that we just don't do right now for the time. But I think this kind of gives you a really nice overview. Is there any questions for the end? Because Fun Friday is waiting. Great. Then I say thank you and see you at the next workshop. And yeah, let's ping pong together. Thank you.
Thanks.